Experiencing the 3 Incredible Weeks with Meher Baba, as told by Darwin Shaw. There are perhaps countless ways to understand the work that Meher Baba was engaged in throughout September of 1954. However we may understand this period of Meher Baba's life and work, there can be no substitute for direct experience. Only the small group of men who accepted Meher Baba's invitation to visit him in India and who made the long journey to Mehrabad can ever know what this unique period of Sahavaas with him was really like. The impact of this event was to have such a profound effect on so many of these men that they collectively came to describe the experience as 3 incredible weeks with Meher Baba. For one participant, Darwin Shaw of Schenectady, New York, it was a period during which Meher Baba revealed more and more of himself. For Darwin, it was a time when Meher Baba seemed to allow the men there to see and experience what Darwin has described as Meher Baba's divine beauty. Darwin Cyrus Shaw was born in the United States in a small town in upstate New York called Lake Luzerne on July 20th, 1908. He was raised there in a small Christian family, and he always thought and spoke of Meher Baba in Christian terms as the Christ. Darwin and his wife Jean first met Meher Baba together in 1934. Later, Darwin's father and mother, Aaron and Helen Shaw, not only met Meher Baba, but also helped in the early development of the Meher Spiritual Center in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Darwin's parents lived in Myrtle Beach for a period in the 40s while helping to prepare the Meher Spiritual Center for Meher Baba's expected visit there. Darwin and Jean and their children, Lowell, Leatrice, and Renee, also lived in Myrtle Beach for nearly a year in Elizabeth Patterson's home, Yupon Dunes. During this time, Darwin worked to prepare the center while the center's founders, Elizabeth Patterson and Norina Machabelli, were in India with Baba. Darwin was, of course, with Meher Baba on many subsequent occasions, during Baba's visits to the West in the 1950s, as well as at the 1962 East-West Gathering in India, and, of course, the 3 Incredible Weeks. In 1982, Darwin's wife Jean invited my wife Zoe and me to travel with them to Mehrabad on what was to be their final trip to India. So, in September of that year, Zoe and I boarded an Air India flight with Darwin, Jean, and Baba singer Bill Cliff, and we all headed off to Mehrabad. Thankfully, Bill had the presence of mind to bring along a tape recorder, and he recorded a talk that Darwin gave on Mehrabad Hill under the tin shed near Baba's Gadi on September 17th, 1982. In this talk, Darwin reminisced about his experiences on his first trip to India and on the time he spent with Meher Baba during those 3 incredible weeks.
Ever since coming to Baba in the early 30s, I had longed through the years for the time when eventually I would have the opportunity to come to India and to be with Baba in his heartland. And this finally came about in September 1954, some 28 years ago this very month. And I'd been with Baba very intimately at Scarsdale in 1952, helping him a lot. Baba had a cast on his leg and left arm was in a sling. And he had arranged for me to be with him for 2.5 weeks and be all the time. It was very intimate. And toward the end of Baba's stay, Nilu, who was there with Baba, one day got talking with me, and he just wagged his head and said, "Come to India." And the way he said it, it was almost as if Baba were saying, "Come to India." And I really got a thrill out of it, because it seemed to me at long last that maybe it could happen. So In the spring of 1954, lo and behold, a message came from Baba inviting any of his Western, and all of his Western men, lovers, devotees, friends, or interested persons who could afford to come to India to be his guest for approximately 3 weeks. And we would cable Baba our reply. Of course, when I received that, just reading it, already my trip began in the spirit. And of course I mentioned it to Jean. She saw the cable, the invitation and all, and of course we have 3 children there, but they were big. And we all agreed that I should come. And I saw a way of being able to pay the way. I could borrow the $1,172 from my pension fund, and it could be taken out on a weekly basis, and it wouldn't be too painful at all. And so I cabled Baba that I was coming. And that was 4 months before the actual trip began, but during that 4 months I was traveling in the spirit to India, far away. And when the time finally came to come to India, of course we traveled by propeller plane in those days, and it was supposed to take 48 hours, but it actually took us twice that long. I won't go into that, that's a story in itself, but I'm sure that I wanted to see something of the world because, I thought I'll never make a trip like this again. And I know that Baba planned everything, even to my staying over at the Star and Garter Hotel in Richmond Hill, suburb of London, where Baba had been, and even going to the pyramids and all that. So I knew right along that Baba was indulging my secret wish to see a little along the way. But we arrived in Bombay and stayed at the Grand Hotel, and we were there a couple of nights, and there were some 18 men who eventually came. We didn't all arrive at the same time. Some came a little bit later than others, like Dr. Ben Heeman and Mr. Hendrickson and so on. But all told, there were 18 men. And Merji and Nariman and Arnabas and Havali and Hoshang took us in tow. And they had a chartered bus. They put us on the bus and took us up to Pune for a nice lunch at the Napier Hotel, and then on towards Ahmednagar. And at the outset, we were led to believe that we would be stationed with Baba lovers in the town of Ahmednagar, one here and one there. But it wasn't until we were on our way here that we found out that of all places, we were going to stay on the hill, their retreat, in the very room which had been for the sequestered Eastern and Western women. And we arrived here around 10 o'clock in the evening of the 11th, 1954. Baba was not here physically, he was over at Marazad. But we had a few moments to look around, and we started to do that. But Baba's presence was so intense here that I kept saying, where is it coming from? Where is it coming from? And somehow, I don't know, I seemed to focus on the stones of the building. They seemed to be bouncing off Baba's loving presence. And as often happened, something from the New Testament flashed through my mind. The story of how one day Jesus and his close disciples were at the foot of the mountains, and they were so exuberant with joy at being so near to Jesus that they couldn't contain themselves, and they were making a lot of noise, They were very exuberant. And some people coming by were annoyed by the noise, and they spoke to Jesus, can't you make them be quiet? And Jesus said, no. If they didn't speak out, the very stones would speak out. And that's what I thought was happening here. The very stones were shouting out Baba's presence radiating his presence. So this was the beginning of the wonder of the stay, which later turned out to be what we described as 3 incredible weeks with Meher Baba in India. And each succeeding day seemed to become more incredible than the previous ones. And we were treated royally. We were Baba's guests. And the excellent food was supplied. There were 2 station wagons with drivers to take us wherever Baba wanted us to go. And but we stayed here mostly. But the following day, we didn't know anything about this when we came, but the following day was to be the huge last mass Darshan at Wadia Park at Ahmednagar. So we were piled into the station wagon early in the morning, wagons, and brought into Wadia Park. And already many thousands of people had come, and there was a great, huge pandal there, very colorful. Pandal, of course, the tent was outside. And as they do here in India, the women and girls were sitting on one side and the men and boys on the other. And Baba had instructed that we Westerners should sit on the platform and be near Baba's chair. And there was a bhajan group on the ground just below, and a PA system, and the music was really great. And people were still coming from all directions, many on bicycles, of course, thousands walking, some by car, and there was even one who came on an elephant. And for we from the West, it was just a pageant of color and beauty and wonder. And so shortly after we had arrived, Baba arrived and stepped onto the platform, and he was so beautiful and so dynamic and sparkling, and he just gave us a quick, flashing glance, and he walked over to the fore part of the platform and prostrated himself in front of that vast multitude. And when he stood up, he used the board, and Erich translated, "In order to save you the trouble of bowing down to me, I bow down to you." And then he quickly walked down the steps and sat first with the women and then with the men, and came back up and said, "In order for you to help you to understand that I am one of you and one with you, I have come down to sit with you." And this was the beginning of the day. And Baba did sit back in his chair for a while, and there were 6 young women in beautiful blue saris who came and ranged themselves along each side in the front, and they sang a lovely arti to Baba. There were some political speeches, I suppose, that we didn't understand the Indian language. And then it was time for the avatar to go to work. So he took off his coat, he rolled up his sleeves. Oh, I missed one thing. Of course, he also, you must have read, he also took time to wash the feet of 7 poor men and bow down and touch his head to their feet and give each one of them 51 rupees. And he said, as each one of you is in one way or another an incarnation of God, I take pleasure in giving you this Dev Darshan, which is a gift to a God incarnate. And then he walked to the edge of the platform and sat with his feet dangling over, and huge containers of, I think they were like peanuts that were sugar-coated, for him to give out as a prasad. And so he started doing this, and several hundred girls, women, and even young girls with young women with babes in arms would come in front of him, and each receive a contact, a loving contact with him and some prasad, and they would put garlands of sweet-smelling flowers around his neck, or give him bouquets, or have some fruit which he would touch and give back to them as his prasad. And then that line would be stopped, and some men and boys would come, and this was the beginning of what was going on all day. And so Philip Dupuy and I thought to see Baba a little better, so we scooted around and sat in the front for a little bit, and Baba looked over there and he just twinkled his eyes and gave us a glance like that. But then we came back and stayed on the platform, and we were free to move around. But it was the beginning of a day of divine love in action, really divine love in action. There are movies, but no movie can really convey the intensity, the purity, the luminosity, and the beauty of divine love in action. And this is what we watched, hour after hour. And you know, you could not be in such a situation and remain static. Something happens. You begin to have a subjective experience. Things open up within that you didn't even know were there. And one is plunged into a struggle to grasp the significance of what is happening. The outer thing was so beautiful and so amazing, so incredible, but something more was happening at an inner level, and one could sense that. What is it? What is it that's really happening? What is it, this transference, this giving of the divine love? How is that happening? And I know I was plunged into this deep struggle to grasp the significance of it. And I think this is one of the impelling reactions that one gets in the presence of divine love, that one must try to fathom its significance. Of course, divine love is total significance, and there's never any way to fathom its significance. But we must try. And this is part of our awakening. I feel this is part of Baba's way of awakening our consciousness, because we struggle to see more deeply into the meaning of divine love. And one can see into it. I found that out. One can even see love around Baba. Imagine seeing love. So this went on hour after hour, and sometimes whole groups of men could not contain themselves any longer. Baba was so magnetic that everyone just could not wait to get up to touch him in some way, to have a contact with him. And sometimes whole sections of men would rise up as if with one spirit and surge forward, you know, and Baba would stand up and tell them to be patient. They would get their turn. But I thought, well, what is the matter? Aren't they getting the same love that we're getting here? Don't they know they're getting it? So I walked off the platform and took a walk way out around the whole pandal. It was just as intense out there as it was up near the platform. So they were all being enveloped and permeated with this love. But the funny thing of it is that you're never satisfied. That only arouses you to a greater intensity of longing to come closer to that wellspring of divine love. And so that was it. I've later on in years thought that Baba was doing universal work there. It wasn't just confined to those 80 to 100,000 people who were there that day. Baba did not pray for anything except to go and sit in a nearby field where there were some 20,000 poor people waiting to be given a free meal. But they did not want to start until Baba would come and just sit with them for a moment, which he did. And he came back and continued. And when his right arm would wear out, he would start with his left arm, and so on, back and forth. And when his neck would get piled up with so many flowers, they would be taken off. And before long, there were big piles of sweet-smelling flowers all around Baba. And it was very fragrant and beautiful. And as I say, watching this and being exposed to the impact of divine love, things were happening within. I suppose with everyone, but I can only speak for myself. And for me, it was a source of just immense wonder. And as the hours went by, my great wonder deepened into amazement. And I was finally, I suppose, astounded. And I did not know what was happening. But I later on realized that as a result of the impact of even that one day, that was the love of the Christ, can you imagine? I know that I experienced a deep shock, a deep love shock that lasted, it probably still to some extent. I don't think it would ever wear off. But it makes such an impact that one is just somewhere within just completely wiped out, overwhelmed by such an intense exposure to divine love. Well, this was our first day. Can you imagine? And so, of course, I'm just giving you a thumbnail sketch of it all. And when finally 6 o'clock came, Baba had scheduled to leave then, and he climbed on top of a car. And it was a very magical moment. The setting sun was there, and that made it nice and luminous. But Baba's luminous love seemed to just permeate and envelop the whole area. It was just a magnificent and very divinely magical moment. Excuse me. Well, the following day, of course, we were here, and Baba did not come out. I suppose he wanted to give us a little time to try to assimilate something of what we had been exposed to. And of course, needless to say, that was only a beginning. I'm still struggling to assimilate those things. I'm sure they have rest. So it wasn't until the second day that Baba came out here. And when he came up on the hill, he greeted everyone in a very friendly way. Some were meeting Baba for the first time, actually. And camaraderie sort of attitude, to make us feel relaxed. And we walked around. Baba began showing us a few things, and Baba then took us on a tour, around the Avatar, giving us a guided tour of everything. And even way out in the back, there was a little building where he used to be in meditation, with a building with a little window where he would reach through for his food or have his board and write on his pointed figures on his board there. And he told us many little stories about what had happened here and there, and then took us to the tomb, and of course later on down Lower Mehra Bath and all that. And the opportunity finally came to be with Baba, alone for the first time, a private interview. And these were held over in that little room which faces the hill on the opposite side. I guess the library's there. Yeah. And it was a room that was being used by Will Backett and Charles Purdom. But they vacated the room for that day. And each one was allowed to come in and have, quite a few minutes with Baba alone. And when I came in, of course, there was Baba and Erich there. I had never met Erich before. And this was sort of funny because Baba introduced me to Erich with Erich reading the board. So Erich said, reading Baba's board, "Darwin, this is Erich." And then he turned to Erich and said, "And Erich, this is Darwin. He is one of my dearest ones." And when Baba said that, that broke me up. But actually, something else happened before that, and that was the embrace. Baba revealed so much of himself all the time anyway, that I wonder what they really meant, that he had so many veils. I'm sure he did. But how could you conceal divine purity, divine beauty, divine love, divine reality? These things shone through. They just shone through. But there were times when he could and did seem to pull back more of the veils and reveal more of himself. He just could do that. And he lovingly did that, especially on this occasion. This was one of those very priceless, precious occasions when he did that, when I came to him. He would just somehow pull that back and reveal himself. But of course, also there would be a great wave of love. And of course, I fell into his arms and experienced total bliss. Baba made it possible for us not only to come to him in the physical, but also in the spirit. Completely in the spirit. Our meeting with him was complete, just complete. Nothing was missing. Nothing held back. No barriers, nothing. One came to him completely. And when one fell into his arms, it was just beyond your wildest dreams. Just bliss, sheer bliss. One could not describe the sweetness, the tender beauty of love. very deep within. So wonderful. So when Baba introduced me as one of his dearest ones, great tears fell from my eye. Even though Baba had, in a letter when we were living in Myrtle Beach, referred to me as a chosen disciple, I could never really fully believe this. I thought he was, I don't know, but I just could not believe that. So when he said this, one of my dearest ones, it just broke me up. And I looked at him through bitter tears. I said, how can you say that? And I just say that to Baba. And he became sober. He said, I do not humor you. And then I had a little package. Before coming to India, I thought, I must bring some kind of a present to Baba. But what can you bring? The avatar, what can you bring? So I thought of many things, but finally I knew it had to be something simple. So I thought of a scarf. I'd read or heard somewhere that a scarf is an acceptable gift. So I got a nice white scarf and wrapped it up, and I brought it. And when I had come in that room, I put it on the table. And now it was time for me to give this to Baba, and I picked it up, and it looked so small and so insignificant, And so I lamely gave it to Baba and said, I thought just some little thing. And Baba, who was very intensely aware of our thoughts and feelings, and quickly responded, and how noble he was. He said, he accepted that, of course, but he said, you yourself are the greatest gift you could have brought. God's gift to me. How beautiful. And I realized later what he meant, because I had given my life to God years before. And now God's just giving me as a gift to him. So I could not possibly put in words the feelings, I was destroyed. So somehow I got through that, and I guess each of the others did, because they were around the next day and so on. And so then we began to meet with Baba every day here in this big room on the lower, and it had some furnishings. I believe it had a carpet, and very comfortable chairs were there for the Western men, and a sofa for Baba to sit on, and a coffee table. And Baba had thought of our every comfort, and it was really nice. And before coming to India, I had thought to myself, when we get there, Baba will probably give us some profound spiritual discourses, which he did. They were very profound, and they're available in the account of the Three Incredible Weeks. And but it didn't take long before we began to realize that something much more important was happening at a deeper level, and it had nothing to do with these things he was explaining to us, at this surface level. We were already at a deeper level, and things were happening. One could not remain static. Things changed. Our sense of dimensions of who we are and what we are. There was a dissolving process. And we were in a realm which was new and wonderful, but where we'd never been before. And it was somehow in the realm of Baba's being. And this went on day after day, and sometimes we would play music on a gramophone, sometimes Western music, sometimes Qawwali, and Baba would explain the words, so beautiful. And each day was so many incredible, every little thing seemed so incredible. I can't, I use that term, but there was an intensity of the reality of his being that no words can clothe or convey. It is an intensity of reality where veils are rent asunder, inner veils, and you see into realms that you couldn't see into before. The realms of of the beauty of his being. And I know as we would gather here with him from day to day, I began to realize some of what was happening at inner levels. Whereas when I came here, there were the usual inner clouds and limitations and walls and all of that. But I discovered that the fog had been dispelled. And where there was a wall before, now there was a window and a great vista. And on all sides, this had happened. And one could see great distances into the beauty of his love. This was the beauty. This is the reality, which one could see. I suppose inner centers that I didn't know anything about were opened up. But all of this was happening because of simply being around Baba. There were no ceremonies, nothing, no yoga exercise, nothing. Just being around him. We were caught afire. And this just went on. And it did deepen my feelings about him. My feelings about him were always closely related to those of Jesus, of the Christ, although I also know that he is all of the others. But we come by our own special ways that he draws us through our life experience, and that happened to be mine. And so one day we were coming up from Lower Meherabad with him, and as we crested the hill, I know it was so much like walking over the hills of Galilee with Jesus that I was just amazed, it was just so Galilean. And as often would happen on occasions like that, something from the New Testament would flash through my mind. And this time it was Jesus saying, you all say yes, yes, but you do not do the things I tell you. And when I thought that, Baba quickly gave me a sharp glance, just a quick glance. And then we walked around and we came in, and we sat in there. And I was way over the other side of the room, not right up close to Baba. And so Baba picked up the board, and he didn't look at me at all. But there was sort of a bland expression on his face. He said, you all say yes, yes, but you do not do. And I'm beginning to, wonder, wow, And then, without still looking at me at all, he said, he made a few comments and said, I am the Ancient One. And when I drop my body, you all will come to love me more and more and see me as I really am. That answered that question. We will not lose him. We will be enabled to love him more and more and see him as he really is. This is for everyone. And when he was saying these things, I was saying to myself, how can you fathom this being? And still without looking at me, he said, with a bland expression on his face, I am so unfathomable that even I sometimes cannot fathom. Yeah, I was the only one who knew what he was talking about that time. But someone else on other occasions would be saying something that I would say, what's he talking about? But someone else would know what he meant. See? And but of course he was intensely aware of all of our thoughts, feelings, moods, and all of that. And so he didn't have us sitting like yogis, but sometimes he would have us sit and think of him, try to visualize him and feel him. And we would feel him coming in on us, see his face and feel his love, of course. How could you help it? Even though he was the mayor of that when we were doing this, and so on. And then one day, he took us to Sikori, which was a wonderful day. And when we got there, well, there were many things along the way. We stopped at Rahuri, and I got some beautiful pictures of Baba looking right into the camera. Very beautiful. And Baba had us try to tell funny stories. I was never good at that, around Baba anyway. But Charles Purdom and some of the others had a few ready stories. and Baba seemed entertained. But we finally got to Sikori, and we moved around and with Baba, and they were showing us the premises. And it was nice to meet Godavari Mai and see this place where Baba's beloved master Upasani Maharaj had lived and where Baba had stayed with him. It was wonderful to see this. And Baba oftentimes would like to sit down and lean against a post or a tree. And so he did this. He sat down, and there was a tree just outside the building. And a man who looked like a monk with one part of his robe off his shoulders came by and stood and looked lovingly at Baba and sang a hymn or a song, which was very nice. And Baba took us in where we could see the Kenyas and the nuns and how they lived and all of that. In conclusion, I would like to say that Baba had been filling us with so much love and wonder that finally we reached the day when he had us sitting with him in there and in this big room here. And there was no more need for music, there was no need for discourses, there was no need for anything, just to sit there and look at this lovely being. And he allowed us to do this. And it was a warm September afternoon with a gentle breeze blowing through those windows high up on the wall. And Baba sat there and like a beautiful flower, and just waves of love would just rose from him. Just waves of love. And that room became love's sanctuary. So beautiful. And as the wind was sighing through those windows up on the wall, it made a noise. And Baba smiled and pointed to that, and we nodded. No one wanted to break the enchantment of that quiet time, and we were just silent. And we sat there, and Baba's beauty was just irresistible. For my part, I could not take my eyes from his lovely face, and it turned out to be one of those occasions when, as I watched him, it looked like veils began to fall away from his face. And that which was exquisitely beautiful became indescribably more beautiful. And love, which was pure divine love, became universal, illimitable, measureless love. And whereas one can ordinarily see into a being a little bit, and you see all the the things of an ordinary person, but there was nothing there. There were none of those things. Just an endless, measureless beyond of pure, sweet, beautiful, timeless love. Baba was drawing us deeply into his being. We were drawn deeply into his being. And we were just completely melted away. We were just melted away. It was so glorious that, finally, of course, as all good things come to an end, Baba embraced us one by one, lovingly, ever so lovingly, and left. And the Westerners, the Easterners and the Westerners left, all except two people who were too intoxicated to move. And one was one of the Eastern men, Katwal, Sabat Katwal. He sat here and I sat there, and we just looked at each other. We couldn't move. We could not move. It was so wonderful. And I thought, if I could only catch something of this in words so that, it would last, so that maybe perhaps someone would have some idea of what it was like. So then I wrote this. Today, Baba really and truly fulfilled the 23rd Psalm. This was enough time. As we sat about him in the inner room where we gather, he asked different ones what we were thinking. Of course, when he came to Gradually, the veils have been slipping away from him ever since the time of his arrival with us. But today, they really fell away. When he asked me what I was thinking, I said, of you, Baba. You are all love. Of course, I had seen that he was all love. I knew that's what it was. So this was what he gave me to last forever. Let the song of the wind ever remind you of my love. Let its soul-healing balm sigh through your being wherever you are. And know that I have loved you as only God can love. And be sure that I will love you thus throughout eternity. Know, beloved, that you are mine forever, that I've called you from the realm of illusion to caress you with love divine. Jai Baba.